I guess it's recording.
Shadow Knows, the Shadowe Crew podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first ever podcast of the Shadowe Crew podcast, exclusively here on the Shadow Knows YouTube channel. Hopefully you all have been checking out the YouTube shorts and videos as we do various action figure reviews, and our plan is to expand into all things pop culture. But I'm super excited about our first episode because we're going to be superly centrally focused on action figures today. We've got some really awesome special guests as part of the Shadowe Crew. Dr. Brantley, who is not a doctor, and we're not quite sure why he calls himself a doctor, but we're just going to let it be. And Mr. Alexander Storm, and Chet Maddox, who we pay by the hour. So we got to wrap this up pretty quickly because it's pretty damn expensive.
It's a 12-hour minimum.
Yeah. But I'm excited. I'm excited to get into things. We got a lot to talk about. And also, speaking of action figures, the PowerCon is happening, and so there's a lot of exclusive figures and stuff. Are really, one of the biggest action figure toy cons across the United States. So we'll jump into that a little bit as well.
Did you know that that's America's mightiest toy convention, by the way?
Is it really?
Wow.
Yeah, that's what it says on their website. So
it must be true.
You can't. You don't lie. You know what I mean?
So I've never been. I don't know. I just don't have any desire to go to the con, and it's becoming less and less desirable to go to these conventions. And maybe that is a topic for another day. But I think the first thing we should probably jump into is, if you think about all the toy lines that have been released over the past several years, some really popular toy lines that are still ongoing. I know all of you collect in some form or fashion, but I'd love to know, what toy line are you really excited about? And I think specifically what we'd like to know from each of you is, if you had the opportunity to recreate or bring something that hasn't come to market to life, what would it be? So let's talk about that. What line are you excited about? What stood out? And then if you had an opportunity to kind of bring something back to life or do something differently or better, what would it be? So anybody feel free to chime in, jump in.
Well,
but I'm super excited to talk about it.
I only collect a very specific thing, and that's Indiana Jones. I've got a few other things from long ago, but I couldn't keep up with doing this and this and this, so I chose one. I love Indiana Jones. So recently I got stuff, after a 15-year absence, and, mostly it's good.
Mostly.
Did you miss the Shia LaBeouf character in your collecting? Was that the 15-year gap?
I skipped the Mutt Williams. I had a sneaking suspicion before the movie came out that I didn't need that one.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. That's Shia LaBeouf, so
Yeah,
didn't really add much to that movie.
The Indiana Jones fit, like it's interesting, and it's funny, this like phenomenon of like all these other franchises from the past coming back into cinema, and then from there action figure lines coming back as well. Obviously Ninja Turtles, you got Top Gun sequel coming in. Is there Top Gun figures out there?
And
I'm sure there is.
Dr. Brantley and I was talking about that. I think Paramount is probably underserved, because I'm surprised you see these 6-inch lines of characters. I thought Tom Cruise and Maverick should have gotten an action figure, and I'm kind of surprised that they haven't moved into that direction over there.
Yeah, that would be for me. If I had to choose one, I would do some really awesome like Top Gun. I would do like the jets. I would do like the retro, like Maverick's whole, I think it was the F-16, and then what he's flying now. You do the Iceman, then and now. It'd be like really cool. They may have done it, but it wasn't. It must not have been popular or great because I didn't see it.
If I was gonna
go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
So I did see that somebody did a figure that was, sort of like Maverick, So it looked very similar to Tom Cruise in a whole flight suit, but they did not have the license. So, it was like some off-brand kind of thing, but it looked just like Tom Cruise and Maverick.
Got it.
Yeah, if I was gonna do a Top Gun, like the first figure I would do would be Goose, like in a burning plane falling down, and it would come in like a fishbowl, so that it had like interactive parts. Those birds that like duck into the water when you tap them. It would be that, but it would just be like Goose in a plane, so that way you could just have that in the background. I think that'd be a great selling toy. Hot Toys should do that.
It comes with dog tags.
Yeah, comes with dog tags and an oven mitt.
But I think that'd be cool, right? Like that's a super cool franchise, and maybe they'll do another
all
one.
The vehicles.
Yeah,
you can do all the different characters. They've it would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think again, Dr. Brantley and I talked about that, and Mission Impossible. Tom Cruise has not done anything toy line merchandise wise with Mission Impossible, and I'm like, he's done what 7, 8 films now. Great opportunity, man.
Yeah. Maybe someone does like a Tom Cruise toy line of like all of this stuff.
Of all of his characters.
Yeah, it's like the figure line's called Tom Cruise. And then you just get like every
from Risky Business all the way through Maverick.
Yeah.
That'd be great. That'd be fantastic.
So I think the thing that I'm looking forward to right now is I'm a big fan of G.I. Joe. The G.I. Joe classified line has been like really on fire. And I did back 2 of the crowdfunded last year's His Tank, this year's Dragonfly. And, I think other than the actual windowless packaging, which towards the end of the line now, they're doing some really nice retro photo artwork and things like that. I didn't like the early stuff, but it's now looking better. But I'm kind of glad they're moving back to the actual plastic boxes because, there's always a fear that even if I'm getting it from Hasbro Pulse or I'm picking it up from Target or something, is the figure going to be in there? It has somebody swapped it and returned it, Well,
they started doing that shitty packaging too, where it's like no plastic, nothing. You just open the lackluster box with their shitty graphics and you get a figure, and it's like it ruins it. It's like, all right, well, if you're gonna take away all the time in packaging, have somebody who's developed packaging, then lower the fucking cost, because most of the cost was calculated in all the plastic, and you remove that, and you just put it in like a paper bag no one gives a shit about. And then when you watch an unboxing with these new toys, you're just like, this blows. It's like it sucks. Like I don't even want to unbox my own shit half the time because it's like there's no window display. Half of the thing with collecting toys is you get the toy and then there's a display box,
exactly.
Right? And so the display box is supposed to be like, okay, cool, this is what I'm getting. Like, this is fantastic. It's presenting everything. But when you just say it and you like just don't care, but you still charge the same, in my opinion, I think it's just taking advantage, and you don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to.
I feel you on that, and I think when I first started collecting, I wasn't like a mint on box collector, and for some strange reason, when I started the classified line, they had such great window packaging that I actually hadn't removed any of the figures. And it like now I feel like when I get a new from the windowless packaging now, like I automatically open it because it's like I want to make sure the figure's in there if it's intact. And I think it kind of does hurt the collectability points, because I know some people that just have the old blister packs all over the walls and you can see all the characters displayed, but the windowless packaging is I think diminish the keeping the box kind of feel that I think everybody wanted. And everybody's the reason why they go into toy stores in the first place when we were little was you could see the actual character and that was the thing that attracted you to actually get it.
Yeah, I mean,
look at some of the Marvel stuff that they've moved away from the packaging to Chet's point, to reduce costs. And it's just like, I don't want to see a picture. If I'm going to pay $20 some odd for a figure, and I see a picture of Loki on a box, but I can't physically open it at the store, you know what? I'm not buying it. I don't care if I can see an image on Amazon. Like, I want to see the actual figure, and that's not an old school mentality. That's just the right thing to do.
No,
right?
You know how it's not old school mentality is, and Alex, I think I was talking to you about this the other day. So HasLabs did all this shit, right? And then the Rancor was supposed to be like a big sell, and it didn't fund. But if you went back and you looked at the HasLab like actual like campaign for that shit, they didn't have completed toys. So like a majority of the HasLab stuff that they do, they have like the completed toys. They take the images of them, they put them out there. But the Rancor, when they were funding it, they didn't have that. They just had sketches and blueprints, and no one wants that shit. It's the same reason why all these toys sit on the toy shelf when I can't open it and look at the. I mean, Playmates is putting out like relaunches of TMNT from like when I was a kid, and I'm more excited to buy that shit than I am anything that's new, because it's like a blister and a card back, and I could see it, and it's got the weapons tree. You can see all that shit. It's like, yeah, I know what I'm getting. It's fantastic, and that shit's only like $9.
Well, you know, there's I think there's some companies that actually have kept that in mind and listened to the fans. I think the Valiverse figures, the Action Force. He hadn't moved away from that, and I think that's why his popularity grew a little bit more, because he listens to fans. I like some of the NECA. They do it with the cardboard front, and then you can open up and see the actual figure inside through the plastic.
Yep.
And I think people still do want to see what they're purchasing, because I've seen a couple of the Marvel Legends, and they don't look like the pictures. You open up the boxes, and it's almost a deceptive practice. And it's kind of nice that they actually listen, because I think the bottom line was their bottom line got cut, and fans weren't picking up those products. And the one of the biggest fans is when you take a kid into the store, he sees that figure, he wants it. He doesn't see like the difference of like a character printed on a box, and he's thinking like, that's what I want. And I think that hurt their bottom line, and they immediately did a reverse on that.
Yeah. Totally, they completely did. Have any of your HasLab purchases come in bad packaging?
I haven't actually. The Hiss was the first HasLab that I purchased, and that hasn't come in yet. I think there's probably about another maybe several weeks away from coming in. Okay. And I'm interested to see. I saw the packaging at San Diego Comic-Con, and they showed it. It wasn't plastic, but the actual artwork and the detail that they put into the box looks pretty nice. So it's like almost like a work of art almost that they gave you.
The last thing I bought from like HasLab, like the HasLab site, was the Golden Cobra Commander.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that packaging is fantastic.
Yes.
And I bought that when Chris and I were talking about how Call of Duty needed to introduce G.I. Joe, which they still can come talk to us about that. But that was really good packaging.
Yeah, I think the deluxe figures, they have done a really nice job with, like, it displays, it opens up. It's kind of like, it's a little packaging in there, but it kind of splits in half. I think they've done a really good job with those.
Now, you talked about how you got all your stuff from HasLab. All the stuff I've got from HasLab has been great, but the Target exclusives, that's a whole different. I got the Short Round and the Indiana Jones old, retro ones, and both of those, the cards were messed up, and Indiana Jones, I got two of them. Both of them were already off the blister pack in the box that it came in.
No.
Who makes the Target exclusive Indiana Jones ones?
It's all still Hasbro.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just shipped to Target, and Target ships them out to you.
And then Target turns them into shit.
Yep,
Jeez.
because HasLab has that stupid paper packaging around, all their stuff. Nothing moves in shipping.
Yeah.
Target, I like literally they just tossed it in a box and shipped it out.
And you know what? The same thing kind of happened with Amazon. Amazon used to put all their stuff in the boxes, and you used to get your figures and everything, and they were really nice. And now they've moved away, probably due to cost, and they've introduced like more or less envelope packaging. And I've noticed that sometimes when I get stuff from Amazon, it is not in very good condition.
If it's a blister pack in an envelope, it's going to get smashed.
Yeah, it does most of the time.
I will say one of the advantages of that, which is a disadvantage to people to try to get figures from Amazon, some exclusives, is that the limited amount of mom and pops still around.
Mhm.
That's where you want to get figures that are in good shape, right? Because they know how to treat the figures. They're probably ordering them direct. So I think for anybody that's listening, if you're really look, if it's for your kids or whatever, who cares, right? You're gonna open it up anyway. But if it's for you, collectability, you're saving them for a future date, you may want to explore ordering them direct from like, comic book stores or the mom and pops, that helps support them. But I think more importantly, you probably get better figures than what we're probably seeing today. I want to talk a little bit about the HasLab thing. Like crowdfunding's been very popular with figures recently. I think it's really exploded. Like COVID, it really blew up, right? Because cons went virtual, and so everyone got used to like ordering shit online, exclusives. What's your thought on that? Is that a good thing that continues to evolve? I think there's an argument to be made that it limits the availability for other people to want to get these really cool figures. And I think the other thing is that the cost is way too high in some instances for these really cool exclusives. But on the flip side, it gives, Hasbro or any other company that's looking to explore the ability to like not invest a lot of money until they know the demand, which is a good thing for them. So what's everyone's take? Is it a good thing? Should more companies move to this, or should they pause and go, hey, let's revisit this because maybe this isn't the future?
Yeah, I think it's fucked up. I understand the need for it, but like, if you think about crowdfunding in general, right? Crowdfunding in and of itself was created solely based for the person that's not funded by millions of dollars to see what interest would be involved in their project. So you would get a lot of these really unique projects where people gave a shit and you would get top quality stuff and you paid for it and you felt like, cool, like that's my thing. The issue that I have with like Hasbro, Pulse, and companies that do shit like that, I think Mattel does it too now. It's like Black Room or something like that, right? Or like, so whatever it's called. The problem, the issue that I have for it is like, Hasbro has the money to fuck up, and they know the audience, right? But they put out things like they did the Transformers Generation like Deathosaurus thing. I get that. A lot of people didn't understand that. A lot of people don't know that. So what they're doing is my opinion is this is a lot like the Coca-Cola machines. If you don't know about the Coca-Cola machines, those are created by the dude that created Segways because he wanted to give water to like these people in a country, and Coke said, if you can make our machines, we'll create the water for you. And so but the whole purpose of that is the Coke machines are reporting back to Coke what everybody likes. And so that's why you see these random Coke flavors come out where it's like orange vanilla, right? Well, HasLab is kind of like that, right? Like, do we have interest in Transformers, Deathosaurus? So they do it, it gets funded. It's like a crazy funding on that one, the Cobra Hiss. I think the stuff that they're putting out is great. Where I think it's messed up is like Hasbro shouldn't have like, if we like what was the GA like, so like the Hiss thing like got funded. Let me look it up real quick. So they got funded, but they did like,
I think they did somewhere between 26 or 27,000.
Yeah, it's like 26, 27,000.
Yeah.
But the problem I have with Pulse is simply the fact that they do, if we get to this, we'll also release this. It's like your Hasbro, you don't need to do incentives. People are gonna fund it. How about if we get funded, we're also gonna do all of this? Because then it's like, I'm a firm believer if you do a crowdfunding project, throw all your shit out there and don't worry about stretch goals, because somebody wants to buy your shit. They want the best that they can get. So if you can do $40,000 without stretch goals or $20,000 with stretch goals, just do $40,000. And if you don't make it, you don't fucking make it. Because this HasLab thing, in my opinion, some of these goals that they do, like the His tank was like, oh, you also get all these other figures. Like, well, you give me a His tank, like that, you should just have the figures anyways, especially for the cost of it. But I understand it. I get it. I don't agree with it. I would buy stuff from it, but it's because if I don't buy it from there, I can't get it anywhere else, and that's also crap.
Well, like you're saying there, but there's companies like Super 7, and like the big thing is the Cat's Lair, and that's like $650, and I believe it's like another $50 for shipping, so it's up to about $700. Now, there's no way that a company of Super 7 size is going to put that out for retail,
right?
And there's certain people that absolutely want that item. Now, $700 for myself seems a tad bit ridiculous. It's like a car note. But there's people out there that's like, hey, the Cat's Lair, I've always wanted it, and the size, and Super 7 doesn't have the capital to produce something of that magnitude. Now, Hasbro, on the other hand, with the Dragonfly Chopper, okay, could they have put the Dragonfly on the shelves? They could have. Could they put the His tank on the shelf? They could have. And I think like Mattel, we can talk about the Jurassic Park gates. There's no way that should have been a Mattel creation.
That was stupid. That pissed me off.
$250 for that. That should have been $100 on the shelf. It wouldn't have taken that much room, and they could have done it. Now, the WCW Nitro Ring, which was ridiculously priced as well, another one that did not get funded through Mattel, was $499. Seeing it in person was different than seeing the photos. It didn't do it justice. But was it worth $499? No, not for a wrestling, not for a play set, a wrestling stage that's going to sit in a corner and it's going to do anything. So I think that Hasbro has done a smart way. They know the market, they know that there's a demand for it, and they've been systematic. Now, when they start doing 2 or 3 HasLabs a year, then they've kind of pushed it. But once a year, and it's a larger than life item, and you're thinking like, okay, like I said, I'm gonna pull the trigger on this $399 or $270. I think the Dragonfly was $275, and I can do that once a year. But when they start getting to the point where they're doing it seasonal, like it's winter, spring, fall, and you start seeing 4 or 5 of these things come out, then that's, as a mega corporation, then they're kind of hurting the crowdfunding routine,
Yeah, and look, I bought something on Hasbro Pulse, but it was because I was trying to buy Hero Quest. If you remember that board game from way back in the day, Hero Quest, that shit to buy the original board game was like $190, and it's like beat up and torn up. And then Hasbro Pulse came out with Hero Quest, and they relaunched it. I was like, yeah, I'm buying that, and it was good. It was a great purchase. Like, it came out when it needed to come out. I will say that about Hasbro Pulse is like, if they say there's a launch day, they're gonna get it done by that day because they have the manpower. But like, I'm okay with crowdfunding for companies like Super 7 because Super 7 doesn't have the capital, and they can't. They don't have McDonald's money, so they can't just hope and hope it sticks, right? So I'm all about that. I still think that Cat's Lair thing is ridiculous, although I have been thinking about pre-ordering that. And I also am still currently debating with myself on getting Grimlock that transforms, because Grimlock is like my absolute favorite transformer, and I have the Magic the Gathering Grimlock card. I got that thing for like $40. It's now like $300-$400. So I'm a huge fan.
well, let me ask you this though. And I've seen it. It's $1,500 for one end.
Yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
That's a novelty. It's like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with that character?
But you say, but
I'm gonna fucking sit here and then stare at it and be like, yeah, I fucking have this, and people don't. And then I'll put a live streaming camera up, so when I'm streaming, you can tell me to tell it to transform, and it transforms. Other than that, yeah, it's just gonna sound fucking. on the shelf.
Well, that's what it is. It's going to sit on the shelf. You're going to like maybe your friends come over. You do it once a year. Transform, and it goes, and you know. Well, I think $1,500 is really crazy for a self-transforming figure.
Yeah, but I mean, but if you're a big fan, I mean, like Dr. Brantley, how much would you pay for a replica giant boulder from Indiana Jones to sit on a shelf?
Yeah,
nothing. Think I can't find a boulder?
I will say this about
is the official Hasbro boulder.
Yeah, I will. The only crowdfunding that I would be a part of for any Jurassic Park figure would be Sam Jackson's character's arm that was left over from the Velociraptor. Like, that's the only thing. They package that exclusively, or build a figure, like limbs from the characters that were killed, like the guy, the guy outside.
Power station, and Sam Jackson's arm.
There you go.
You know what? We should probably not publish this because that might be something we see on this site if someone is listening. So speaking of vintage stuff in Jurassic Park, you think about 93, so that's pretty vintage at this point. But if we go way back in the collector's days and these repop of figures, you've got the Star Wars figures, not the new stuff, but like the repop of the old school packaging, both like the classic style from the original trilogies, or the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that they released on Disney Plus, that they did those as well. You've got Star Trek figures that are also pretty popular that they've released, and a couple of the thing though is, as I go into stores, a lot of those are sitting on peg hooks still, right?
Yes.
You may not see the Luke, right? I don't know how, Luke Skywalker, popular figure, you may not, but I'm seeing a lot of others. Is this a good idea? And why do you think they're not selling? I mean, for the younger generation,
like Star Wars,
is it popular? Well, Star Wars or Star Trek or some of those that look like the old Kenner figures, right? Like, why are they not selling? Is it because it's, the articulation isn't there and it's not great collectability? And do you think they should continue to do this, or let's pump the brakes? They're sitting on peg hooks. Everyone wants to connect the original stuff. Let's not do these like repops like the Ninja Turtle stuff. That's definitely a lot more popular amongst kids.
I think the Ninja Turtle stuff, the reason why it is popular, it is based for kids.
Yeah,
and I think that kids are able to, there's, I don't know how many different versions of the Turtles, but it seems like every few years they're bringing that new version out, and they got another population. I think with some of the older stuff like Star Trek, even with the new Picard series that came out earlier, I think is that you're not getting younger fans. That, number one, it's a streaming site, and I think that streaming has hurt it. It's not on every TV like we had in the syndication in the days. And I think that younger fans, like the first original Star Wars trilogy, they're not watching that. Now, they're probably watching like maybe Clone Wars or Rebels, but the characters are kind of like, becoming to the point where like the younger generation is not really interested in those. And it's the new popular characters. I thought Star Trek did a terrible disservice when it got rid of Prodigy, because that was based for younger viewers. And I'm sure that you could get kids to go in and purchase those characters, but they're not going to purchase characters from Discovery, Strange New Worlds. They're not gonna purchase those characters.
I want that 90-year-old man. Nobody wants that action figure.
Yeah, at all. Well, and two, like the Kenner stuff, and I'll get into this a little bit later in the podcast, but all those toys hit because like Star Wars was hot back then.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. It was hot back then, and then they fucking demolished Star Wars. So I don't think that anyone is like, and if you are a collector, like when I'm looking for old toys, I'm not going to Target. Like I'm not. No. I'm going to like flea markets. I'm looking on eBay. I'm not. I don't give a shit about, because I'm gonna get it in the package, but it's not gonna be anything, right? Like it's just in the package. So if you are somebody that's like, I really want these old Kenner, like the old figures from back in the day, like you're just gonna find them somewhere else, and you're not gonna go to Target or Walmart. There have been a couple, and when I ran into them, I actually hit Chris up and was like, "Hey, Merry Christmas, dude! Here you go." And it was like they relaunched the like old school Ninja Turtles and the Ninja Turtle bus, and
that was the first time they did that too.
Yeah,
since the originals, yeah.
And I was blowing Chris up on the phone. I was like, dude, like these, look at these. And so it was like, yeah, cool. I got all 4 turtles and the bus and like shipped that shit to Chris, and I bought some. And but that's solely based on like, you're right, Ninja Turtles is for kids, but also like I remember specifically having those, and those were fantastic. Whereas like the Star Trek, Star Wars, like all the older figures like that, I mean, you played with them, but if you really want value, I think that those type of figures are value collected, not nostalgia collected. And so that's where it becomes an issue, right? Because it's like, well, I'm going for value, and I can find I can find these old turtles or these old Kenner figures, and I'm good.
Well, I think that's why they're peg warming at the moment, because I think it's the maybe the older fans that are going into stores and they didn't have an opportunity. They're not going to go through toy hunting. They're not going to go to conventions, and they can put a line together, and it's not going to it's not going to be astronomically crazy for them to do it. But I don't see newer generations getting into it. I think the Ghosts that they just did for the HasLab, I thought that's a smart idea because they're updating it. It's going to be on Disney Plus with the Ahsoka series and the Rebel figures too. I just think they have to, if you're going to do Star Trek, you shouldn't have moved away from the animated show. Yeah. You need to get an audience of kids that are highly interested in that. And I think that Ninja Turtles does that the best. I think that every couple of years, Paramount, Nickelodeon is reintroducing them and getting a brand new batch of kids involved in it. And I just think that the Star Wars hasn't done that well enough with the figures. And I think that they're running into a problem where they're almost trying to will that to collectors instead of what can we do to get a younger audience more involved in picking up these figures.
I also think Hasbro's issues with their toys is like, stop with the fucking lines. You have like vintage line, you have Black Series, you have Legends, like just pick one. And it's like, I get it. I understand that like people have different levels of like size they want to collect, but it's also like, I don't want to have to spend $20 more just to get a figure that's worth what I would pay for the cheaper one. And that's what Hasbro's ultimately doing with like Legends and vintage collections and Black Series and whatever other series they want to come out with, right? I don't know.
Well, I think it's also a bottom line too, not to cut it off, Chris, but I think it's a bottom line. They're paying so much for the license and they're trying to milk it as much as possible. So you're going to think of how many different lines can we put it through, because the difference between like G.I. Joe for Hasbro, there's nobody to pay. They're not paying anyone. That's their own line. But when you're doing something like, Star Wars, you got to pay the piper in Disney or the Marvel Legends. You got to pay. That's why those figures usually cost a little bit more than their standard other lines.
Yeah, I think Star Trek has a universe problem, which is like, I think Marvel at least, has done a fairly decent job in like tying in all of like recently for the mass global audience of how these characters and things intersect to then be able to construct toy lines and segment. I think Star Trek has a massive amount, there's also that like characters but it's been very limited to, I think, an adult audience, as you said. And so if they're really going to capitalize, because it is a really powerful franchise, I think sometimes maybe they think it's not going to appeal to a younger generation. But I think it has potential. So I think it's probably less about toy issue and more about just like the overall philosophy of like what that franchise could be, which especially now, it's like, do it now. Marvel's on the decline. There's questions about Star Wars, although like Filoni and Favreau maybe figured some magic out. We'll see. But it's a great DC is still trying to figure the fuck out. Like they've handed the baton now to see like so why wouldn't you as like Paramount go like, hey, this is our opportunity to jump in here Because right now there's like an open, it's open playing field. So, Dr. Brantley, you know you're going to say something.
Well, yeah, Star Trek currently there's like 3 different timelines that they're working with. The original movies and Next Generation universe, then the new movie universe, then the TV universe, and they are not connected.
Mhm.
So, it's like, okay, where do you start and which one? And you're right with Prodigy. Those, if they made figures of those, they were all interesting and unique looking characters. Kids would have liked to play with them, rather than if you've any of the ones you go in now, it's just guys and girls in the same uniform.
They did make figures. Playmate released the Prodigy figures, but they only got through one wave right now. And with the show in limbo, will they be able to introduce any more? And the figures look pretty good, but I just think they're not hitting their target audience, and their target audience is a younger skew. And just like Ninja Turtles is going to keep being reinvigorated year after year after year, and Paramount's going to keep making money from that. But I think Paramount has done a disservice to Star Trek, and I would say probably even Mission Impossible, because I think you can make those skew to younger fans as well.
But I also think it's who's behind it, right? Like, perfect example for you. Like NECA, one of NECA's like San Diego Comic-Con exclusives was Alf.
Yeah, I saw that.
That shit sold out. I have one. So I know people. I got it. That's how it works. But like, that's an old ass figure. I don't know anybody that watched Alf, and not to mention,
hey, I didn't watch that. I watched Alf.
Well, yeah, we did.
I mean, it was like NBC. It was like NBC prime time, man.
Do you remember the cartoon?
Yes.
Yeah. So that NECA.
Look, I'm just waiting for a NECA exclusive Dinosaurs, the TV series figures.
That's
next
coming
year
out.
Comic-Con.
It's coming out.
Right?
It's coming out.
There you go.
Yeah, you saw. That's one of my favorite all-time TV shows, and I keep hitting up their website trying to order the fucking Dinosaurs figures, because that shit will be on my shelf faster than anything else. I love that show so much.
Not the Mama variant exclusive figure.
Yeah,
but
what I'm saying is, I think it's all about who's behind the toy.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think I want to move us on to another topic, because we talk about Star Trek toy line maybe being undersaturated and reaching out to a more of a larger audience. Let's talk about something that might be a little oversaturated. Funko. So
yes.
I mean, the kudos to them. They've got every license imaginable, which is crazy, and it's still incredibly collectible. As I visit malls, every shop has Funkos stacked high. There are shops that are dedicated to Funkos. It used to be a very niche market, and now you can find them at Ross. On this YouTube channel, Shadow knows he finds them left and right. You go to 7-Eleven, you find them. What's everyone's thoughts on it? Is it now? Is it, for lack of a better term, is it jump the shark, or is there still popularity? Are you all collecting them? Do you own some? I'd love to get a sense of how that's going, because if you asked me 5-10 years ago, it was much different. How are you all feeling about that in 2023?
Well, first of all, those exclusively Funko Pop shops are now a Spirit Halloween. So.
They're open 24/7, 365.
And in the shop is a exclusive Spirit Halloween Funko Pop.
Okay, really quick though, has Funko actually made a Spirit Pop though? I think they have. Hold on, keep talking.
If they have, that's incredible.
I think Funko is just. I would compare it to to the Lego line. The Lego line is still highly popular. They still keep building more sets, more franchises, and I think the reason why is because its evolution is changing. I think the Funko Pop is just the same generic figure done thousands of times, and I think that it's I think there's that new movie coming out about the Beanie Baby craze, and I think that it's the Funko is like one of those toy companies that had it was hit the right moment, but I think that they've already passed their moment, because if I go to any of the comic book stores, or if I'm in any of the conventions or anything like that, I see them overstacking one another now.
Yeah.
And I just think that they've gotten to the point where they've hit that craze. You know, I remember they were selling for like crazy amount of money in the days. Now it's like, again, you know, our resident name of the channel, Shadow, he finds them everywhere, and he's finding them for extremely discounted prices now. That doesn't sound like something that's going to work.
There is a YouTube video of a guy finding Funko Pops at Spirit Halloween. So kind of to answer the question on my end, I'm very specific on what Funko Pops I have, and it's not a lot. I have Rick and Morty, like the unicorn and the jar, whatever one. He is my favorite one. And then I have a Grimlock signed by the voice artist.
Okay.
That just goes with my Grimlock collection. And then I have like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle signed by Ken Eastman of Metalhead. And then I have another one on order of Krang that's also signed by Eastman. So, but that's I think that's all my pops. Like outside of that, like I don't care. But those don't look like regular Funko Pops. I don't chase shit for those.
Yeah, in fact, I think the only one I have, Mr. Storm got me, which is the Pickle Rick.
Yeah, Rick and Morty. You know, but no, I think they hit a time, they had a craze, and then the craze is over. And I think, like I said, unlike Lego, who's continuously, you know, still very popular between adults and children, is because they kept evolving. But the Funko Pop doesn't really evolve. It's like, you know, they've gotten bigger and smaller, and they have, like, you know, album covers and things behind it. But I don't see that sustainable, you know, as a business model to have something that doesn't evolve.
Yeah.
Well, they're one of the main ones. The one I have is called Tinkles and Ghosts, by the way. But they also are somebody that when you go to San Diego Comic-Con, and I wasn't there this year. I don't know how big it was, but the Funko booth always used to be like smashing. And then I looked at their exclusives this year, and like, no, I don't give a shit about anything they had. They didn't have anything that's like I have to have it, and that's where. Like I feel like you do, which is just kind of like,
Yeah.
Well, I think they killed their exclusivity. You know, when you make so much and the demand so much, you know, there's no one that's actually left to say, hey, well, I want something like that. They've done every franchise, every imaginable character, and you know, I think they just, like you said, oversaturate themselves.
Yeah, like
when you do everything, you want nothing. You know?
Yeah, it becomes too much. Like you can't collect it all, and I think those are designed not to be played with, but to collect. And when it reaches in excess of thousands and thousands, you're really narrowing your collector's audience to people with a shit ton of money or have a house and they're absolutely insane, like the Beanie Baby idiots who are sitting on a pile of freaking plush that are worth zero. And so I think that's where they find themselves in. And look, they're still popular. Definitely not hating. They made millions and millions of dollars, so kudos to them. But I think in terms of where it was and where it's at today, obviously a much different story. Speaking of what everyone is collecting, and I wanted to save time before we wrap up to talk a little bit about PowerCon and, you know, what's going on thus far. We'll post some videos on the channel, some updates as things come through. So stay tuned for YouTube shorts and some reviews. What are you collecting now? And I know that some of you've maybe purchased some figures recently. Perhaps we kind of talked through that a little bit, but like what are you excited about collecting today? And is there one or two things that stood out, or a couple things that you were kind of disappointed in? I'll start off. I think you know, recently I've scaled back the things that I've been collecting. I think partly because there just hasn't been something super exciting. I've always been a fan of McFarlane. I know, again, that's oversaturated some of the figures, and I know like the knock on McFarlane stuff has been the articulation has been a bit off. And so a lot of his stuff is to sit on a shelf, which I was really excited about when those original Spawn series figures came through and some of the, the other things. And so there's no question he's dominated the market, but I do want to talk about recently the DC Multiverse figures that have come out from McFarlane Toys, 22 points of articulation, whether you're into to some of those characters or not. I know, again, it's not at the Marvel level in terms of popularity, but I have been really impressed. And just want to, one in particular here. This is the Batman figure for DC Future State. Really cool Batman character. I love the 22 moving parts. Really cool too packaging. Like, it stands out on the shelf. You walk into the store, compared it to all the stuff that's out there. I think the design is on point, and so for a younger generation that loves Batman, and then obviously anybody that follows along with DC Comics, and I think it was $20. It's still a lot for a figure, but relatively recent. I'm looking down the Transformer aisle, and this, like, the Beast figures are like $30-$40, and the packaging's not even, it's cool, but they're plastic, right? So I would say this one here has definitely stood out. This whole line has been really great. The Armored Batman I picked up. Even some of the Flash stuff has been really good too. So
is that Batman from the new Batman movie?
Yeah. So Batman, they've done the Flash line. They've done the Flash Batman, Michael Keaton's version. That's great. Yes. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff there. So I would recommend taking a look. I think it's a good figure. On the flip side, what I've been disappointed in, so I was sharing with the guys earlier, the He-Man Masters of the Universe series, the animated series that's been on Netflix. I think we can probably devote a whole episode into that rebirth. But I've been a He-Man fan, grew up on He-Man, have collected some toys, so I just had to purchase it. I think this is the Mattel version. I think it's more designed for little, for kids, right? I mean, 4 and up. But I do like the packaging, which is really cool. That stood out. So I have to say kudos, right? Going back to it's not hidden. You can see what you're buying. But in terms of could you invest a little bit more time in the detail and articulate? I know it's for younger kids. It's $15, so I think $13 or $15, so the price is right. But a bit disappointed in this series. I think they could have done a bit more. I will give them kudos to if you wanted to put it on a shelf, you could. It's not hidden. But I think if for another $5, I would have paid if you made it a little bit cooler. And I'll tell you, there's a lot more of these things sitting on the shelf. So it could be one, if nobody's watching the series, or two, it's kind of a weird juncture of it's not designed for little kids where it's cheap enough and it's not great enough for collectability. So this one's probably been returned, to be honest with you. But
and is probably going to be returned.
Yes, going to be returned. But those are the two things I would stand out. So in my opinion, take a look at the multiverse stuff. I think it's really cool if you're in that action figure line, and I would avoid this unless you got a 2-year-old and they want to play with He-Man. But I think that cartoon is probably not designed for them. So what is everyone else collecting? What are you seeing? Anything else that anyone wants to talk through what you picked up?
All right, well, I guess I'll go next. This came in from Amazon. I was really excited about it. It is the Cobra Eel. It is the from G.I. Joe Classified. Nice. Now it is the windowless packaging, but this is of the better packaging. And I haven't actually opened it, so I'm hoping the figure's still in there. But it came this week. It's actually supposed to come, I think, 4 weeks later, but they came early, and it was a pleasant surprise. But this series, they've been producing great figures. All the best characters. I was a big G.I. Joe fan when I was younger in the 80s, and I still have some of those original characters I had when I was a kid. And I was just happy when they did move to the 6-inch and more articulation, more detail. And I have not been disappointed with the line so far. It's been great. And again, like I said, I ordered all of the Haslab, the Dragonfly, and the Hiss. And, I'm just looking forward to more stuff from the Classified line.
Well, you got your stuff early. I'm waiting for my Target exclusive Club Obi-Wan Indiana Jones, which they have delayed twice now. I keep getting it's supposed to be today it was delivered, then you know what, we're gonna have to put it off. We're gonna have to put it off again. So
well, if
it shows up,
if you do like if you ask Shadow, he'll probably find it at some discount Target.
I know. Cancel.
Mr. Maddox.
Oh man, yeah.
All right, what you got, man?
Oh man, there have been. I mean, I have a problem. So there have been a lot of toys that I've wanted to buy. I got a few. Let me grab it real quick. So this one, my one of my buddies, BJ, and I, we spend like a lot of time going back and forth. I'm like, did you see this figure? Did you see this figure? And so there was one that I was trying to get, and it was the Eastman and Laird Ninja Turtles pack that was a Target exclusive, but unlike Indiana Jones, this one actually came out. It was a little bit pricey, but it's this one. And there's like some green screen effects happening here, but it was really cool. But we talked earlier about how you could a lot of these things had like things you could flip down and the toys would come out, and this is one of them. So it just kind of folds down and you have all the figures. What's awesome about this is it's the comic book series. So if anyone remembers, one of my favorite shows that I don't understand Netflix, but one of my favorite shows on Netflix is The Toys That Made Us.
Yes.
And they talked a lot about like they did the initial like mold and sculpt for the turtles, and then realized that the tail kind of looked like male genitalia. But these ones have the tail on them, so that's fantastic. I'm gonna probably be doing an unboxing of that, and we'll figure out where that's gonna live. But yeah, these are from what I gather, they're great quality. Some of the hands are a little bit hard to put back in, but they also all have the same color bandanas, because in the comics, in the first few comics, the turtles all just had the same red bandana, and it wasn't until they got on Nickelodeon that they needed to make them different. That's when they came up with all the different colors. But one that I'm more excited to unbox than anything, which is fantastic, is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, the car with the tree. So I don't know if you've seen that. Chevy Chase is in there. He's a star. Yeah. So this is car with tree is what they put on this Hallmark box. So if you're into National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, you too could be excited to unbox that shit.
That's probably the most obscure toy on the entire site.
Good luck finding this.
Yeah, I don't think Shadow can find that one. Yeah. Shadow can't find that.
Yeah, Shadow, let's see you find this.
I think we're almost out of time. So PowerCon, any thoughts? We've seen some stuff that have come through thus far. Again, we'll update the channel. Anything that stood out to anybody around PowerCon that you're looking forward to? I know some He-Man stuff, Master of the Universe stuff that came through. Any exclusives that you're stoked about?
For myself, I haven't purchased any of the Action Force, which is, I guess, the European version of G.I. Joe through Valiverse. But they have a Swarm Horde figure that they're going to have up at the PowerCon, and I like Valiforce's owner, Bobby Vala. He's very transparent with his fans, and he just seems like he wants to actually get feedback and give fans a little bit more of a say into what he's doing. And I know he's doing also a panel, and just like at the Joe Fest, technically it was people were saying it was more or less the Valiverse Fest, and he's very charismatic, a la like Todd McFarlane. But I just like I know he recently lowered his figures, and that kind of made me think about this. Here's a guy that wants to do good work, produce it for fans, and I think that PowerCon exclusive is going to be the first one I'm going to purchase of the Action First Valiforce figures.
Like I like the idea of PowerCon. I think it's in the wrong state, to be completely honest with you. But I haven't seen a lot. I mean, it could just be because I'm not looking for it. But I'm hoping something comes out of it. Maybe I'll have an update by the next one. But not a lot has come out for me in PowerCon. I think
they did move it from Anaheim, and I think there's probably just a cost because I'm certainly, in Anaheim, it probably was extremely expensive to hold
Oh, yeah.
PowerCon there. So,
Yeah.
but Ohio, it's just
Ohio is good for like Gen Con for board games. I've done that before.
okay.
But I don't go into Columbus, Ohio to look at action figures. Just seems kind of like paying for gas and pumping it down the drain instead of in your car. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. I don't know. We'll see, but yeah, I'll have an update if anything good. The other thing that sucks about PowerCon is if you go on and look, like they really don't have any of their exclusives, like on their website. There's nothing there.
I think it's the individual toy makers that are just posting on their pages, and it's getting around to some of the other toy sites. But yeah, they didn't really do a good job. They have a attendee list, and there's like McFarlane's there.
Yeah.
The Nacelle Toys is there, and that's from, I believe, the gentleman did the Toys That Made Us. Valaforce, NECA. So like a lot of
those are the two I'd be excited to see about.
Super Sevens there too. So it's I think a lot of the niche ones. It doesn't really seem like the Mattels, the Hasbros, and the bigger guys are doing the power cons.
Yeah.
Well, and they're not doing exclusives there. It's the smaller companies doing exclusives.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't really anything. Like the one thing was they had a Frazetta Death Dealer statue.
I saw that,
but there was $170. So no, I'm not going to get that. But it looked cool.
Yeah.
And the only other thing was like they added some glow in the dark skeleton figures.
I saw those. Mm-hmm.
That looked kind of cool, and it was pretty cheap. So I was like, oh, maybe. But other than that, everything just looks like meh.
Well, maybe that's why we should actually support the PowerCon a little bit more, because it's not for like the big retailers or the big toy companies. It's for these smaller niche guys, and maybe that's what the industry needs. Is the guys are out there being extremely creative and listening to fans, and trying to get products that we probably wouldn't get from any of the bigger companies. So that's a good reason for us to actually take a little bit more of a look at PowerCon.
Yeah, I agree.
You can go to Ohio next time.
I will.
Well,
next year.
Next year.
I will sacrifice myself. My sister does live in Ohio, but my camera's like now moving, which I don't know if you guys like.
Yeah, it'll be next year. Will be the Maddox and Storm tour of PowerCon.
yeah, I'm all about that.
Well, really great first podcast, all. I hope you enjoyed it. I think the intention is to continue to do these pretty regularly. So I hope that some of this information was insightful, and some of the good, the bad, and the ugly. But thanks for joining us for our first version. Again, subscribe. Thanks for listening. More to come. So for Alexander Storm, Chet Maddox, Dr. Brantley, and myself, see you later, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care, all.